3 weeks after the battle at Theta 7, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all talking at once about the incident. The war between humanity and the Krathon Dominion had shocked everyone, not because humans won, but because of how they fought and why they fought. The council chambers were designed to hold thousands, with each species having their own section based on their environmental needs. Some areas were filled with water for aquatic species. Others had high-pressure atmospheres for species from heavy-gravity worlds. The humans sat in a section designed for species similar to themselves, and they were surrounded by delegations that looked at them with mixtures of fear, respect, and confusion. The Krathon ambassador stood at the central speaking platform, his large form imposing as he addressed the council. He was angry and humiliated, and he wanted punishment for Earth. He played footage of the battle on the massive viewing screens, showing human ships ramming Krathon vessels, civilian ships attacking military targets, and Marines fighting in conditions that would kill most species. "This is barbaric warfare," the Krathon ambassador declared. "These humans fight without honor, without rules, without respect for proper military conduct. They use civilian vessels in combat. They sacrifice their own people in suicide attacks. They show no mercy and take no prisoners. The Galactic Council must sanction Earth for these violations of civilized warfare." Many species in the chamber nodded in agreement. The footage was disturbing to them. Most civilized species fought wars with careful calculations, limited objectives, and clear rules of engagement. The idea of civilian ships voluntarily entering combat zones, of crews deliberately ramming their vessels into enemy ships, of fighting to the death rather than surrendering, all of this seemed alien and frightening. The human ambassador, a woman named Victoria Lane, waited patiently for her turn to speak. She had been a diplomat for 20 years, and she knew how to handle these situations. But before she could respond, another voice requested permission to address the council. It was Solix, the Valari elder who represented his species. He was old, his fur graying, and he moved slowly to the speaking platform. The chamber fell silent as he approached. Everyone knew that the Valari had suffered terribly in the attack, losing tens of thousands of their people. They expected him to speak about his people's pain and suffering. Instead, Solix spoke about the humans. "I stand before you today because of humanity," he began, his voice soft but clear in the chamber's acoustics. "My species exists today because humans chose to help us. Not because they had to, not because we could offer them anything in return, but simply because we needed help and they were able to give it." He activated the viewing screens and showed footage from a different perspective. It was from a Valari evacuation ship, recorded during the battle. The screen showed a Krathon destroyer closing in on the helpless transport, weapons charging. Then the Vanguard appeared between them, taking the hit on their own shields, buying time for the Valari to escape. Captain Daniel Morris and his crew fought for 6 hours against an entire fleet, Solix continued. Their ship was designed for scientific research, not combat. They had every reason to run, to hide, to wait for their military to arrive. But they stayed, and they fought because my people needed help. He showed more footage, this time of civilian ships entering the battle. The mining vessel that used its industrial laser to blind a Krathon cruiser. The cargo hauler that sacrificed itself trying to protect others. The hundreds of ordinary people who volunteered to risk their lives for strangers. "The Krathon ambassador calls this barbaric," Solix said. "He says humans fight without honor. But I ask you, what is honor? Is it following rules and protocols while innocent people die? Is it standing aside because helping might be inconvenient or dangerous? Or is honor standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves, even when the cost is high?" The chamber was completely silent now. Every delegate was watching Solix, listening to his words. I have spoken with many human survivors of the battle. I asked them why they came, why they risked everything for my species, for people they had never met. Do you know what they told me? They said they came because it was the right thing to do, because they couldn't live with themselves if they did nothing, because on their world, on Earth, survival meant protecting each other, helping each other, standing together against threats. Solix turned to look at the Krathon ambassador. "You call them barbaric because they fight fiercely, but they fight fiercely only to protect the innocent. They don't seek conquest. They don't want to dominate others. They simply refuse to let bullies win. And if that makes them barbaric, Then I hope more species become barbaric like them. He returned to his seat and the chamber erupted in discussion. Many delegates were reconsidering their positions. The Volari had been on the edge of extinction, and humans had saved them. That meant something. Ambassador Victoria Lane stood and requested permission to address the council. When it was granted, she walked to the central platform with confidence. She knew that Earth's reputation hung in the balance, and she needed to make humanity's position clear. The Galactic Council is right to question our methods, she began. We are new to the larger galaxy, and we don't always follow the established conventions. But we come from a world that taught us hard lessons about survival, about loyalty, and about standing up to those who prey on the weak. She activated the screens again, but this time she showed images of Earth, footage of ice ages, natural disasters, predators, diseases. She showed humanity's history of struggle and survival on a planet that constantly tried to kill them. We call it a death world, Victoria explained. Most species in this chamber come from gentle worlds where food is abundant, predators are rare, and survival is relatively easy. Earth is not like that. Earth is a Class 12 death world where everything is trying to kill you. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Predators that hunted us. Diseases that wiped out entire populations. We survived because we learned to work together, to protect each other, and to never give up. She let that sink in for a moment before continuing. The Krathons saw the Volari as prey, because the Volari never developed weapons or military traditions. But they made a mistake. They assumed that because we are new to the galaxy, we would be easy targets. They forgot to ask where we come from. They forgot to ask what made us the way we are. Victoria's voice grew stronger. We will not apologize for saving the Volari. We will not apologize for fighting to protect innocent lives. And we will not stand by when species are threatened with extinction. To those who respect peace and protect the weak, Earth offers friendship and cooperation. But to those who would exterminate or enslave other species who believe that might makes right, we offer this warning. Earth is watching and we will respond. She paused, then delivered the statement that would become known as the Deathworld Doctrine. Earth recognizes the sovereignty of all peaceful species and will respect the laws of the Galactic Council. However, Earth also declares that any attempt to exterminate or enslave a sentient species will be considered an attack on all sapient life, and Earth will respond accordingly. We will not police the galaxy, but we will not ignore genocide. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The chamber was silent as Victoria returned to her seat. The delegates looked at each other, uncertain how to respond. Finally, the council chairperson called for a vote. Would the Galactic Council sanction Earth for its actions? Or would it recognize that humanity had acted in defense of innocent lives? The vote took hours. Many species were torn between their discomfort with human methods and their acknowledgement that the Volari had been saved. In the end, the motion to sanction Earth failed. Instead, the Council passed a different resolution. The Krathon Dominion would be placed under military observation and trade restrictions for their unprovoked attack on the Volari. And humanity would be invited to join the Galactic Council as full members, with a unique designation: Protectorate Guarantors. It was a role that had never existed before because no species had ever wanted the responsibility, but humans had proven they were willing to bear that burden. On Theta 7, reconstruction was underway. Human engineers worked alongside Volari survivors to rebuild the damaged cities. The relationship between the two species grew strong, built on shared trauma and mutual respect. Volari children played in reconstructed parks while human soldiers stood guard, making sure no threats could approach. A memorial was erected to honor those who died in the battle. The names of Captain Daniel Morris, Chief Engineer Amy Torres, Communications Officer Lisa Grant, Navigation Officer Greg Palmer, and every other human who fell defending Theta 7 were inscribed on a massive wall. The Volari wrote their own message beneath the names in their flowing script. When translated to human languages, it read, "They came from a world of death and brought us life. We will never forget." Back on Earth, the families of the fallen received medals and honors, but no amount of recognition could fill the emptiness left by their loss. Cal Bennett's parents held his medal and remembered their son's last message about standing up for those who needed help. Nicole Rivers's... The briefing room aboard the Defiant was smaller than Commander Vextal had expected. Everything about the human ship felt compact and efficient, designed for function rather than comfort. The air had a different quality too, thicker and richer in oxygen than what most species preferred. Vextal had to wear a breathing mask just to remain comfortable. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the head of a table, studying a holographic display of Theseus 7. 4 other humans stood with him, each wearing black combat armor that seemed to absorb light. They were all watching Vextal with those unnervingly direct stares that humans had. "Commander, thank you for coming aboard," Morrison said. "Let me introduce my team. This is Lieutenant Amy Chen, my second in command. She specializes in xenobiology and tactical analysis." Chen nodded. She was shorter than Morrison, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Vextal noticed the same metal implants along her temples. Sergeant Kyle Brooks, heavy weapons specialist. Brooks was massive, even by human standards. His arms were thick with muscle, and his armor was bulkier than the others, designed to carry heavier equipment. He gave Vextal a slight grin that showed too many teeth. Corporal Lisa Martinez, Communications and Electronic Warfare. Martinez was younger, with quick movements and fingers that never seemed to stop moving. She was already interfacing with the ship's systems through a handheld device. And Private Danny Wright, our sniper. Wright was lean and quiet, with a stillness that reminded Vextal of a coiled spring. His eyes had a distant quality, as if he was constantly calculating angles and distances. "My team is Shadow 7, Morrison continued. "We handle situations that require a lighter touch than a full military deployment. Now show us what we're dealing with." Vextal activated his datapad, and the hologram shifted to show current images of Theseus 7. What had once been a beautiful colony world with blue oceans and green continents was now a nightmare. Organic structures covered the surface like a disease, pulsing with sickly colors. The atmosphere had turned yellow-green from the spores the Vrexian swarm released. "The swarm landed 3 weeks ago," Vextal explained. "Within days they had established their presence. Within a week all communication ceased. Our reconnaissance drones showed the colonists being taken into the hive structures. The Vrexians consume other species, absorbing their knowledge and biomass into the collective." "Population of the colony before the attack?" Chen asked. "Approximately 40,000, representing 12 different species." "And you believe the hive mind node is somewhere on the surface?" "Yes. Our scientists believe the node must be physically present to coordinate an invasion of this scale. However, we cannot pinpoint its exact location. The organic matter covering the planet interferes with our sensors." Morrison studied the hologram, his expression unreadable. "What have you tried so far?" Vextal felt his scales flush with embarrassment. "We sent in 3 strike teams, elite soldiers from our best military units. None returned. The environment itself is lethal. The atmospheric toxins would kill most species within minutes. The organic growth releases additional poisons, and the Vrexian warriors are extremely aggressive." "Sounds like a Tuesday for us," Brooks muttered. The other humans made sounds that might have been laughter. Vextal did not understand the reference, but the casual attitude toward such danger disturbed him. "You do not understand. This is a suicide mission. Even if you reach the surface, you will not survive long enough to locate the node." Chen stepped forward, examining the atmospheric readings. "The toxins are primarily alkaloid-based compounds with some heavy metal contamination. Unpleasant, but our filters can handle it. The oxygen levels are actually higher than Earth standard, which works in our favor." "The temperature ranges are extreme," Vextal protested. "From below freezing at night to over 50 degrees during the day. Death Valley gets hotter," Martinez said casually. "And Antarctica gets colder." Vextal did not know these references either, but Morrison explained. "Places on Earth, Commander. We train in environments like this. It's not comfortable, but we're built for it." "What about the Vrexian warriors?" Vextal asked. "They are fast, strong, and work in perfect coordination through the hive mind." "So do we," Morrison replied simply. "The difference is we don't need a hive mind to coordinate. We train together, fight together, and trust each other completely. That's the human way." Wright spoke for the first time, his voice quiet. "Do you have visual data on the Vrexian warrior forms? I need to know what I'm shooting at." Vextal pulled up images from the failed missions. The Vrexian warriors were horrifying creatures, all chitin and claws with multiple limbs designed for killing. Each one stood over 2 meters tall and could tear through standard body armor. The humans studied the images with professional interest, not fear. Chen pointed to various anatomical features, discussing weak points and vulnerable areas. Brooks asked about their resistance to different weapon types. Martinez wanted to know about their communication methods. Wright was calculating how their movements would affect targeting solutions. Vextal realized something disturbing. These humans were not afraid. They were planning. They saw the Vrexian swarm not as an unstoppable horror, but as a problem to solve. "When do we deploy?" Morrison asked. "You just arrived," Vextal said. "Do you not need time to prepare, to rest?" "We prepared during the 3-day journey here," Morrison replied. "We've studied everything you sent us. We've trained in simulations. We're ready now. Every hour we wait, more people might be suffering down there." "You truly believe you can succeed where our best soldiers failed?" Morrison met his eyes directly. "Commander, our best soldiers train in environments that would kill your best soldiers. We grow up on a planet that tries to murder us from birth. Extreme weather, deadly animals, diseases, natural disasters. We survived all of that and made it to space. This is what we do," Chen added. "And we don't leave people behind. If there's even a chance someone is alive down there, we're going to find them." Vextal felt something shift in his perception. He had expected arrogance from the humans, perhaps even cruelty. But what he saw was determination mixed with something else. Compassion. They were doing this not for glory or reward, but because people needed help. "Very well," he said. "I will authorize your deployment. But please understand, we have no way to extract you if things go wrong. Once you are down there, you are on your own." Morrison smiled, and this time it did not look predatory. It looked confident. "Commander, we're always on our own. That's how we like it." 2 hours later, Vextal watched from the command center as a drop pod launched from the Defiant. The small craft accelerated toward the planet, burning through the atmosphere like a falling star. Sensors showed it taking fire from Vrexian defensive structures, but the pod's shields held. Other officers gathered around watching the display. None of them spoke. They were all thinking the same thing. 5 humans against an entire planet consumed by the swarm. It was impossible. The drop pod disappeared into the toxic clouds, and the sensors lost contact. All they could do now was wait. In the pod, Jake Morrison checked his team's equipment one final time. Everyone was secure, everyone was ready. Below them, the nightmare world of Thesia 7 grew larger. "Remember the mission," he said over the team channel. "Find the hive mind node. Destroy it. Get out alive. And if we find survivors, we bring them home." "Understood, Captain," came the replies. The pod hit the ground hard, and the door blew open. The 5 humans stepped out into hell itself, and the Vrexian swarm learned what it meant to face Deathworlders. The first thing that hit them was the smell. Even through their helmet filters, the air carried the stench of decay and something chemical that made eyes water. The landscape around the drop pod was unrecognizable as a colony world. Organic matter covered everything like a disease, pulsing with sick yellow and purple colors. What had once been buildings were now twisted into hive structures that rose like malformed towers against the green sky. Jake Morrison scanned the area through his helmet display. Thermal imaging showed movement everywhere. The Vrexian warriors were active, patrolling in groups of 3 or 4. His display counted 47 signatures within a kilometer. "Lisa, get our communications relay set up," he ordered. "Kyle, secure a perimeter. Amy, start analyzing the hive structures. Danny, find us a high point and watch for anything coming our way." The team moved with practiced efficiency. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. Each person knew their role and executed it perfectly. This was what years of training together created. Martinez deployed a small device that would boost their signal back to the Defiant. It would also try to detect any other electronic signatures that might indicate survivors. Brooks positioned himself near the pod, his heavy plasma cannon ready. The weapon was powerful enough to take out a small building, and he handled it like it weighed nothing. Chen pulled out a handheld scanner and began taking readings from the organic matter covering the ground. Wright scaled a partially collapsed structure with the ease of someone who had spent their whole life climbing, his rifle slung across his back. "Temperature is 48 degrees, Martinez reported. "Humidity at 90%. Atmospheric toxins are at the levels we expected. Filters are handling it fine. The organic matter is fascinating," Chen said, kneeling to examine it more closely. "It is a combination of plant and animal biology, neither and both at once. The Vrexians use it to reshape entire ecosystems to suit their needs. I am reading spores in the air, probably how they spread so quickly. I have eyes on multiple targets." Wright's voice came through the channel. counting 20 Vrexian warriors moving in patrol patterns. They seemed to be concentrated around the larger hive structures. Morrison processed this information quickly. Amy, can you tell which structure might house the hive mind node? Chen stood looking at the twisted towers around them. In theory, the node would be in the most protected location. Probably the largest structure, somewhere central to their operation. But without better sensors, I cannot pinpoint it. Then we move toward the city center and hope we get lucky, Morrison decided. Lisa, any electronic signatures? Martinez was frowning at her device. Actually, yes. It is faint, but I am picking up what might be a distress beacon, about 3 kilometers northeast. It is weak, like it is running on backup power. The team shared glances. A distress beacon meant possible survivors. It could be a trap, Brooks pointed out. Could be, Morrison agreed. But we have to check. We do not leave people behind. They moved out, traveling through the corrupted landscape with weapons ready. The training they had done in Earth's harshest environment served them well. The heat and humidity would have exhausted soldiers from gentler worlds within an hour. For Shadow 7 it was uncomfortable but manageable. They moved quietly despite their armor, using hand signals when possible to minimize radio chatter. The Vrexian warriors they spotted were avoided when possible, eliminated quickly and quietly when necessary. The first engagement came when a patrol of 3 warriors stumbled onto their position. The creatures were even more horrifying up close. Each stood over 2 meters tall, with forearms ending in razor claws. Their bodies were covered in black chitin, and their heads featured multiple eyes and mandibles that dripped with venom. But horrifying did not mean invincible. Danny's rifle coughed once, and the lead warrior's head exploded. Brooks fired a burst from his plasma cannon that turned the second one into ash. Morrison and Chen hit the third with precise shots to its joints, dropping it before it could raise an alarm. Clean, Morrison said. Keep moving. They continued northeast, following Martinez's signal. The landscape grew worse as they progressed. The organic corruption was thicker here, forming structures that looked almost like veins running between the buildings. The air grew warmer and the movement on their sensors increased. We are getting close to something important, Chen observed. The Vrexian presence is much denser here. The signal is stronger too, Martinez added. Definitely a distress beacon. Standard Galactic Council model. They approached carefully, using the twisted structures for cover. The beacon was coming from what had once been a residential building. Now it was half consumed by the organic matter, but part of the original structure remained intact, sealed behind emergency bulkheads. Life signs? Morrison asked. Martinez adjusted her scanner, reading 14 signatures inside. Multiple species. They are alive but weak. We need to get them out, Chen said immediately. Morrison nodded. He had expected this. The mission was to destroy the hive mind node, but he would not leave survivors to die. Lisa, Kyle, you two extract the survivors and get them to a safe location for pickup. The rest of us continue to the node. Captain, splitting up is risky, Brooks protested. I know, but those people cannot wait. We do not know how much longer they have. Brooks understood. This was what made humans different from the cold calculations of the swarm. They refused to sacrifice the few for the many. Understood. We will get them out. While Brooks and Martinez worked on the sealed bulkhead, the others maintained a perimeter. Vrexian warriors were converging on their position, drawn by the activity. Morrison, Chen, and Wright held them off with precise fire. The bulkhead opened with a hiss of escaping air. Inside, 14 aliens huddled together in the darkness. They represented 5 different species, all showing signs of extreme stress and dehydration. When they saw the humans in armor, several recoiled in fear. We are here to help, Martinez said, keeping her voice gentle despite the combat happening outside. We are taking you somewhere safe. An elderly alien who looked like a bipedal insect stepped forward. His translator device was damaged, but his meaning was clear. Humans, you are humans. Yes, now come on, we need to move fast. The aliens hesitated. Humans had a terrible reputation. Stories of deathworld predators who killed without mercy. Then a Vrexian warrior broke through the wall, its claws reaching for the nearest survivor. Brooks was there instantly, his massive form placing itself between the creature and the civilians. His plasma cannon roared and the warrior ceased to exist. Through me, he said simply. Nothing touches you. That is a promise. Something changed in the survivor's eyes. They began to move, helping each other, following Martinez and Brooks. Outside, Morrison made a quick decision. Danny, go with them. They will need your eyes watching for threats. Amy and I will continue to the node. Wright did not argue. He fell in with the extraction group, his rifle covering their rear as they moved back toward a safer location. Morrison and Chen were now alone, deep in enemy territory, surrounded by thousands of Rexian warriors. The odds were absurd. The situation was impossible. They pressed forward anyway. The largest hive structure is 2 kilometers ahead, Chen reported, studying her scanner. That has to be where the node is located. Then that is where we go, Morrison replied. They moved through the nightmare landscape, 2 humans against an alien swarm that had consumed entire civilizations. Above them, in orbit, Commander Vextal watched what sensor data he could receive. He did not understand how they were still alive, but then he was beginning to realize he did not understand humans at all. In the corrupted city, Jake Morrison and Amy Chen ran toward the heart of darkness, knowing they might not return, refusing to turn back, because that was what humans did. The central hive structure towered above them like a monument to horror. It pulsed with bioluminescent light, veins of sickly green running through organic walls that seemed to breathe. The smell was overwhelming here, even through their filters. The ground itself moved with the heartbeat of the structure, and Morrison could hear sounds that his mind tried to interpret as screaming. The node is definitely in there, Chen confirmed, her scanner painting the interior in thermal layers. It is deep, maybe 50 meters underground. The Vrexians built this structure over and around it. How many hostiles between us and the target? Sensors are having trouble with all the organic matter, but I am reading at least 200 signatures. Could be more. She paused, checking another reading. Jake, there is something else. The node is larger than we thought, and it is old. I mean, really old. This hive mind has been traveling the galaxy for a very long time. Morrison processed this. How do we kill it? Chen pulled out a device from her pack. It looked like a standard EMP grenade, but she had modified it extensively during the journey. This should disrupt the neural pathways that hold the hive mind together. But I need to be within 10 meters of the core to be sure it works, and someone needs to stay with it for at least 2 minutes to make sure it fully activates. They both knew what that meant. 2 minutes in the heart of the hive while every Vrexian warrior converged on their position. It was a death sentence. We will figure that out when we get there, Morrison said, though they both knew there was nothing to figure out. Someone would have to stay behind. They entered the structure through a membrane that parted like flesh. Inside was worse than outside. The walls were alive, covered in polyps and growths that tracked their movement. The air was thick with spores that their filters could barely handle. And everywhere there was the sound of the hive. Not just noise, but something that tried to push into their minds. It is trying to communicate, Chen said, her voice strained. The hive mind is reaching out, trying to understand us. Morrison felt it too, pressure against his thoughts, alien intelligence pressing at the edges of his consciousness. Images flashed through his mind. Other species the swarm had consumed, worlds that had fallen, civilizations that had become part of the collective. But there was confusion there too. The hive mind had consumed thousands of species over countless years. It understood fear, understood survival, understood the desire to continue existing. What it did not understand was what it found in the human minds before it. Humans were afraid. That fear was real and deep, but they moved forward anyway. They chose to face death rather than abandon others. They sacrificed themselves for those they had never met. The logic made no sense to a hive mind built on pure survival. Keep moving, Morrison ordered, pushing back against the mental intrusion. Do not let it in your head. They descended through the organic corridors, fighting Vrexian warriors that came in waves. Morrison's rifle fired continuously, the sound echoing through the fleshy halls. Chen handled her weapon with equal skill, dropping warriors with precise shots while still monitoring her scanner. The structure seemed endless. Corridors that twisted back on themselves, chambers filled with biomass that might have been storage or might have been something worse, and always the warriors coming at them, relentless and coordinated. Morrison's armor was taking damage. Warning lights flickered on his display. His ammunition was running low. But they were close now. Chen's scanner showed the node just ahead, beyond one more chamber. They entered the chamber together and stopped. The node was beautiful in a terrible way. It hung suspended in the center of the room, a massive organic structure that pulsed with light. Tendrils ran from it in all directions, disappearing into the walls. This was the brain of the swarm, the intelligence that had consumed so many worlds, and it was protected by at least 100 Vrexian warriors. We cannot fight through that many, Chen said quietly. Morrison looked at the situation, calculating angles and possibilities. She was right. Even if they used every round they had left, they would not make it to the node. They needed a different approach. There, he pointed to a section of wall where the support structure looked weakest. If we bring that down, it will create a barrier between us and most of the warriors. We only need 2 minutes, Chen nodded. She set charges on the indicated section while Morrison held off the first wave of warriors. When she was ready, they moved to the far side of the chamber. The charges detonated, and tons of organic matter collapsed, creating exactly the barrier Morrison had predicted. It bought them time. Not much, but enough. They ran for the node with Chen preparing her modified EMP. Warriors clawed at the barrier behind them. More were coming from other directions. They had seconds. Chen reached the node and activated the device. It pulsed with blue light and the node reacted immediately. The bioluminescence flickered. The pulsing became erratic. All around them, the warriors stopped coordinating and began moving randomly. It is working, Chen said, but I need to stay here for 2 minutes. The device needs time to fully disrupt the neural pathways. Then we both stay, Morrison replied, positioning himself between her and the approaching warriors. No. Chen's voice was calm, final. Jake, listen to me. I was exposed to something on my last mission. Radiation from a damaged reactor we were securing. The medics gave me 6 months, maybe a year. Every day since has been borrowed time. Morrison turned to look at her. Amy, no. Yes, she smiled behind her helmet visor. I'm not running anymore. And this matters. These people we saved, they need someone to make sure they get home. The galaxy needs someone to tell them what happened here. That is you, Captain. I am not leaving you. You are not leaving me. You are completing the mission. That is what we do. She drew her sidearm and checked the charge. Now go, I can hold them for 2 minutes. After that, this whole structure comes down. Morrison felt something break inside his chest. But he was a soldier, and soldiers made impossible choices. You were the best of us, Amy. No, Jake, we all are. That is what makes us human. Now go save the galaxy. He ran. Every step felt like betrayal, but he ran because that was what she asked him to do. Behind him, he heard her weapon firing, heard her counting down the seconds calmly over the team channel. 2 minutes, 120 seconds. We can do this. Morrison burst out of the hive structure as the warriors inside regained enough coordination to pursue him. He ran through the corrupted landscape, his armor systems failing, his body exhausted beyond measure. But he kept moving because Amy was buying him this chance with her life. 90 seconds. They are getting closer, but I have plenty of ammunition. Overhead, a dropship broke through the clouds. The rest of Shadow 7 had called for extraction as soon as they got the survivors to safety. They had come back for their captain. 60 seconds. The node is definitely dying. You should see the reaction when this goes off. Morrison reached the extraction point. The dropship descended and Kyle Brooks was already hanging out of the door, reaching down to pull him up. Amy, Brooks asked, but he already knew the answer from Morrison's face. 30 seconds. Tell my family I love them. Tell them I did something that mattered. Morrison collapsed into the dropship as it lifted. Through the open door, he could see the central hive structure in the distance, still pulsing with that sickly light. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Chen's voice was steady to the end. No fear, no regret, just determination. 3. 2. 1. See you on the other side, Shadow 7. The light that erupted from the hive structure was brilliant white. The modified EMP had worked beyond Chen's expectations, not just disrupting the node but overloading it completely. The explosion that followed consumed the entire structure and spread outward in a wave of energy that fried every Vrexian warrior within 5 kilometers. The hive mind died. After countless years consuming civilizations, it finally met something it could not understand, could not absorb, could not defeat. It met humanity. In the dropship, Jake Morrison watched the explosion fade. The rest of Shadow 7 stood around him in silence. They had completed the mission. They had saved the galaxy. But the victory tasted like ash. Lisa Martinez was crying quietly. Kyle Brooks had his head bowed. Danny Wright stared at nothing, his hands clenched into fists. They had lost one of their own, and the galaxy would learn what that cost had bought them. The memorial service was held on Meridian Prime, in the same grand assembly chamber where the council had made their desperate vote 3 weeks earlier. But this time the chamber was filled with a very different energy. Representatives from hundreds of species stood in respectful silence as the humans of Shadow 7 entered. Jake Morrison walked at the front of his team, wearing his formal uniform instead of combat armor. The black fabric was decorated with medals and ribbons, markers of countless missions and battles. But his eyes were hollow, focused on the simple memorial hologram at the center of the chamber. Lieutenant Amy Chen's image rotated slowly, showing her in her combat gear, smiling with that confident expression she always wore. Below the image, text scrolled in dozens of languages telling her story. A soldier who had given everything to save a galaxy that had feared her people. The chamber was full. Commander Vextal was there, standing straighter than he ever had before. Ambassador Kelthera sat in the front row, her forearms folded in a gesture of mourning. And all around them, representatives who had voted to keep humanity at arm's length now gathered to honor a human hero. But what struck Morrison most were the 14 survivors his team had rescued. They sat together in a special section, every one of them present despite their different species and worlds. They had insisted on coming, on bearing witness to what Amy Chen's sacrifice had meant. Morrison approached the podium. He had not slept since the mission. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard her voice counting down those final seconds. But he owed her this. He owed her the truth. Lieutenant Amy Chen was my second in command, he began, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. She was brilliant, brave, and absolutely stubborn when she believed something was right. She saw patterns that others missed. She understood alien biology better than most xenobiologists, and she never, ever gave up on people who needed help. He paused, feeling the weight of every eye on him. When we found the survivors on Thesia 7, Amy did not hesitate. She wanted to save them even though it meant splitting our team and making our mission harder. When we reached the hive mind node, she knew what it would cost to destroy it. She made the choice to stay behind, not because she wanted to die, but because she wanted others to live. Morrison looked at the survivors. She bought your lives with hers. She bought all of our lives, and she did it because that is what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We stand between the darkness and the innocent. We pay any price, bear any burden to do what is right. The elderly insect-like alien who had been among the survivors stood slowly. His translator had been repaired and his words came through clearly. I am called Keeper Thex. I have lived for 87 cycles. In that time I believed many things about humans. I believed you were dangerous. I believed you were violent. I believed you were not truly civilized. He gestured to his fellow survivors. We were wrong. When that monster broke through the wall, it was a human who stood between death and us. When we needed to cross dangerous ground, it was humans who carried our wounded. And when the choice came between mission success and our lives, a human chose to save us all at the cost of her own future. Thex looked directly at Morrison. We owe our lives to Lieutenant Chen and to all of you. More than that, we owe you our understanding. Humans are not monsters from a death world. You are heroes forged by one. The chamber erupted in what could only be called applause, though it sounded different across so many species. Sounds of approval, gestures of respect, expressions of gratitude in 100 different forms. Commander Vextal approached the podium after Morrison stepped down. The proud reptilian warrior who had doubted humanity now stood with his head bowed. Captain Morrison, I was wrong. I judged your people by my fears rather than by your actions. I have been a soldier for 30 years, and I have never witnessed the courage your team displayed. He straightened, meeting Morrison's eyes. The Vrexian swarm has collapsed across all fronts. Without the central hive mind, the individual warriors are uncoordinated and easily defeated. Worlds are being liberated as we speak. Millions of lives saved, all because 5 humans were willing to walk into hell itself. Vextal extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned. It would be an honor to serve alongside humanity again. Morrison took his hand. The honor would be ours, Commander. Over the following days, things changed rapidly. The Galactic Council held an emergency session and voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership. More than that, they requested formal military cooperation agreements. The galaxy had seen what human special forces could do. Now they wanted humanity as allies, not distant neighbors. Ambassador Kelthera met with Morrison privately in her quarters. She poured him a drink from a bottle of human whiskey she had obtained, a gesture of respect for his loss. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke. "I never expected to like humans," she admitted. "I thought you would be cold, brutal, efficient, but without empathy. Instead, I find you are the most compassionate warriors I have ever encountered." Morrison sipped the whiskey. It burned going down, reminding him he was still alive. Earth taught us that survival alone is not enough. We had to learn to work together to care for each other, or we would have gone extinct long ago. That became part of who we are. And now the galaxy needs that strength. Kelthera looked out at the stars visible through her window. The Vrexian swarm was not the only threat out there. There are others. Dangers that we have been barely holding at bay. With humanity as true allies, we have hope of facing them. "How many teams like Shadow 7 does Earth have?" she asked. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "We have 52 special operations teams currently active, and thousands of regular military personnel ready to deploy if needed. But more than that, we have a whole planet full of people who grew up on a death world and learned that the only way forward is together." Kelthera shook her head in wonder. "The galaxy spent 50 years fearing you. Now I think we should have been recruiting you." 3 months later, the first joint training operations began. Human soldiers worked alongside alien troops, teaching them not just combat tactics but the philosophy that kept humanity alive on Earth. Adapt to your environment. Never give up. Protect your team above all else. And never ever leave anyone behind. Jake Morrison stood in the training facility on Meridian Prime, watching Kyle Brooks demonstrate proper heavy weapons techniques to a group of alien soldiers who looked both terrified and fascinated. Lisa Martinez was teaching communications protocols. Danny Wright was conducting marksmanship training. The rest of Shadow 7 had been offered promotions, positions training the next generation of mixed-species special operations teams. They had accepted because it was what Amy would have wanted. Her sacrifice meant something. It had brought the galaxy together. A young human approached Morrison. She was fresh from Earth, assigned to one of the new joint units. "Captain Morrison? I wanted to meet you, sir. I read about Thessia 7, about Lieutenant Chen. That is why I joined, to make a difference like she did." Morrison looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. The same fire that had driven Amy. "What is your name?" "Private Kate Foster, sir." "Well, Private Foster, you have chosen a hard path, but it is a worthy one. We are not here to conquer. We are here to protect. We are here to stand between the darkness and those who cannot defend themselves. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "I can," Morrison nodded. "Then welcome to the fight. The galaxy needs more people like you, like us, like Amy Chen." He walked to the window overlooking the training grounds. More humans were arriving each week. More joint operations were being planned. The galaxy was changing, learning to accept humanity not as monsters to fear but as allies to trust. In space, the Terran Federation fleet grew larger. Human ships patrolled alongside alien vessels, protecting trade routes and colonies. When pirates attacked a convoy, it was a mixed human-alien crew that responded. When a natural disaster struck a distant world, humans were there with rescue teams. The reputation was shifting. No longer were humans seen as dangerous predators from a death world. Now they were known as the ones who showed up when things were impossible, the ones who never quit, the ones who sacrificed themselves for others. Years later, when historians studied the turning point in galactic civilization, they pointed to the defense of Thessia 7. 5 humans against an unstoppable swarm. 1 human who gave everything to save a galaxy that had never welcomed her people. Amy Chen became a symbol, not just of human courage, but of what the galaxy could be when different species worked together. Statues were raised in her honor. Ships were named after her. Young recruits from a dozen different worlds joined the military, hoping to serve with the same honor she had shown. And on Earth, in a small ceremony attended only by family and Shadow 7, a tree was planted in Amy's memory. It was a simple thing, just a sapling that would take decades to grow strong. But that was fitting. Amy had planted seeds too. Seeds of cooperation and understanding that would take time to fully mature. Jake Morrison stood by that tree, his remaining team beside him. They did not speak. They did not need to. They all understood what had been lost and what had been gained.